What if Mbappé never played in the World Cup? Imagine removing one player from modern World Cup history. Not Messi, not Ronaldo, but Kylian Mbappé. At first, it sounds manageable. France has always produced elite talent. Zidane, Henry, Griezmann, Pogba, Kanté. But Mbappé wasn't just another star. He changed how entire teams approached France. Remove him, and France doesn't just lose goals. They lose fear, they lose space. They lose the constant threat that forced opponents to change their tactics before the match even started. And once that threat disappears, World Cup history begins to shift. The first major change happens in Russia, 2018. France still enters the tournament with one of the strongest squads in the world. Pogba controls the midfield. Kanté destroys attacks. Griezmann creates chances. Varane leads the defense. On paper, they're still contenders, but without Mbappé, opponents can push higher. Defenders no longer worry about being beaten in a sprint race. Midfield stay compact. France becomes easier to defend. They're still dangerous. They're just not terrifying. And nowhere does that matter more than in the round of 16 against Argentina. In reality, Mbappé tore Argentina apart. Every acceleration created panic. Every run stretched their defense. Without him, the game slows down. And when football slows down, it usually benefits one player. Lionel Messi. Argentina spends less time surviving and more time creating. Messi gets more touches, more control, more influence. Would Argentina definitely win? Not necessarily, but the match becomes far more balanced. And if Argentina advances, the entire tournament bracket changes. Suddenly, France's path to the trophy becomes uncertain. The greatest teams don't just rely on talent, they rely on psychology. Opponents believe France could punish them at any moment because Mbappé was always one run away from changing the game. Without him, teams become braver. They stop sitting deep. They stop playing with fear. They begin playing France instead of reacting to France. And in knockout football, tiny psychological differences often decide everything. One mistake, one goal, one moment. Without Mbappé, France may still go far, but the feeling of inevitability disappears. Mbappe's 2018 World Cup wasn't important only because France won. It mattered because he was 19. He showed the football world that a teenager could dominate the biggest stage on earth. Suddenly clubs became more willing to trust young stars. Scouts searched for the next Mbappé. Teams invested more heavily in elite youth development. Without that breakthrough, football still evolves. But it evolves more slowly. The next generation arrives later, and that ripple effect carries all the way to Qatar. Now we arrive at the tournament that cemented Mbappe's legacy. The 2022 World Cup. France remains loaded with talent, but they're missing the one player capable of changing a game in seconds. The one player defenders feared most. The one player who could rescue a match from nowhere. Without Mbappé, France still reaches the latter stages, but they feel different, less explosive, less unpredictable. And when the final arrives, football loses one of its greatest storylines. The real 2022 final felt historic. Messi versus Mbappé. The legend versus the future. Every goal raised the tension. Every minute felt bigger than football itself. Without Mbappé, that narrative disappears. Argentina still has Messi, but France no longer has the perfect counterweight. The match becomes less dramatic, less chaotic, less unforgettable. Argentina likely controls more of the game. Messi's path becomes smoother, and one of the greatest World Cup finals ever played never exists. Every era needs a next chapter. Pelé, Maradona, Messi, Ronaldo. Fans always look for the player who will carry the game forward. For many people, Mbappé became that player through his World Cup performances. Without those moments, the transition feels incomplete. The sport enters a period of uncertainty. No clear heir, no obvious face of the next generation. Football still produces stars, but the passing of the torch becomes far less convincing. So what happens if Mbappé never plays in the World Cup? France becomes less intimidating. The 2018 tournament changes. Argentina gets a different opportunity. The 2022 final loses one of its greatest rivalries. And football's next generation arrives a little later. Would football survive? Of course. The sport is bigger than any individual. But it wouldn't feel the same. Because players like Mbappé don't just influence matches. They influence memories. When fans look back on World Cup history, they rarely remember tactical systems. They remember moments, the runs, the goals, the performances that felt impossible. And without Mbappé, some of football's most memorable moments never happen. Now here's the question. Which player would change World Cup history the most if they were completely removed from it? Mbappé, Messi, Ronaldo, or Maradona? Let me know in the comments.